All right, we are in the last quadrant of Eruption, which is the third Storm Runners book by Roland Smith. And I'm here to tell you, we're reading with permission by Scholastic. I'm here to tell you that I hope we get resolution in this many pages because these people have been keeping my heart thumping. They go from one scary thing to another, right? 8:02 p.m. Sorry, my neck's a little stiff. 8:02 p.m. I assume none of these houses are yours, Cindy said quietly in Spanish. They were on the final stretch of the buckled road leading into the village square. Tomas walked between the ruins with uncharacteristic slowness, scanning the rubble with his headlamp. Our home is not here, but they are the homes of my friends. I have seen the volcano erupt many times in my life. There is always damage. This is the worst I have seen. Why would anyone live this close to an active volcano? Because this is where we have always lived. The lake provides the water. The mountains provide the floating stones. It is a good place. There is no place that is completely safe. And that's true. Everything has its own natural disasters, right? Think about what kind of natural disasters are in Oregon. We don't have a lot, but there are a few. Cindy couldn't argue with him, but she still thought living in the shadow of an active volcano was tempting fate. They reached the square. The only light came from the flickering fires next to where people were sleeping. It was cold. Thunder pealed from the flashing plumes. A lot of people, Cindy said. Tomas looked across the broad cobblestone square at the crude campsites and shelters. This is only half the people. He looked beyond the fires and saw the patch of shrouded bodies lined up in neat rows. Next to some of them, people were kneeling. He crossed himself and walked over to where the dead lay. Father Al saw them approach and stood up from where he was comforting an old woman who was grieving for her son. He gave Tomas and Cindy a weary smile. The boy said you would be here. Chase, Cindy said. Yes. Is he okay? He's fine. He's watching the Rossis in the orphanage. They are badly injured. Tomas continued to stare at those who were now beyond injury. Father Al put his hand on Tomas's shoulder. None of yours are here, he said quietly. The orphanage was spared. Guadalupe and the children are alive and well. Tomas nodded stoically, but it was clear that he was greatly relieved. The generator, he said. Broken, Father Al said, but it can wait. You and your friend need to rest. You've had a long journey. I will fix it now, Tomas said. 8:17 p.m. Tomas reminds me of Senor Salvador, someone who can just kind of fix anything and works and works and works to take care of us. Senor Salvador is one of my everyday heroes. It's fun to read about Tomas. 8:17 p.m. Chase felt a hand on his shoulder and started awake. He looked around. Cindy was standing behind him with her finger to her lips, motioning for him to be quiet. He looked at the Rossis. They were both sound asleep. He stood up. Tomas was not with Cindy, but she wasn't alone. A girl, a few years older than Chase, was standing in the doorway. They walked over to her. This is Blanca, Cindy said, Tomas's oldest daughter. Chase recognized her from one of the photos on Tomas's dashboard. He gave her a smile, and she returned it with a smile of her own. Guadalupe is down in the kitchen cooking. Tomas is with her. Blanca will watch the Rossis. I don't mind watching them, Chase said. Tomas needs your help with the generator. Chase couldn't imagine Tomas needing help with anything mechanical, but he was pleased to be asked. As they walked down to the first floor, Cindy explained what had happened since they had separated. Her voice got a little shaky when she came to the part about dangling over the abyss. He knew how she felt. If the pileup had given way when he was crossing it, he would be dead. Fate, he thought. So Nicole and my father are okay, he said. And Mark, Cindy said. Right. He had completely forgotten about the sixth member of their team. As far as I know, they're all good. Like I said, the connection was terrible. From what I gathered, they found the circus stranded on the road to Puebla. They can't go forward and they can't go back. Kind of like us, Chase said. Cindy nodded, and he said something about elephants and cats getting killed. Apparently, a couple of circus trucks went off the road. I think the drivers died as well. He said some of the cats or one of the cats had escaped. It wasn't clear. What kind of cat? I think he said it was a tiger. Your father was afraid he was going to lose the signal, so he was talking fast. He brushed over it like it was no big deal. That's because he's never come face to face with a big cat in the dark, Chase thought. Did he say where he thought the tiger was? Cindy shook her head. But just before the signal went dead, he said something about trying to arrange a rescue. I have no idea what he meant about that either. Did you tell him about me getting robbed? Yes, and he was very concerned. Then he's on his way up here to find me, Chase said. Cindy looked at him for a moment and then nodded. I hadn't thought of that, but you're probably right. It's not going to be easy in the dark with essentially no way to get here. The only easy day was yesterday, Chase said. Cindy smiled. Now, do you notice how things have changed? In the course of the book, Chase is completely convinced that his dad's on his way to rescue him, and at the beginning he wasn't sure that he had a connection to his dad. Mark stumbled and fell. He had been walking behind John and Nicole. They ran back and helped him to his feet. He was more concerned about his camera than he was about broken bones. I'm fine, he insisted, checking the camera. I was focusing on the pug marks, not paying attention to where I was stepping. He turned the camera on and looked through the viewfinder. Satisfied that there was no damage, he turned it off and asked John, Why are you following the tiger? Aren't we in enough trouble? Things getting a little too dull for you? I'm not following the tiger, John said. I'm taking the easiest path across the mountain. Apparently the tiger's doing the same thing. He's right, Nicole said. Cats are generally lazy. This one's taking the path of least resistance. Really, Mark said. Then why did he walk up the mountain instead of down? John laughed and looked at Nicole. Mark has a good point. I guess, Nicole conceded. Here's the deal, John said. We may bump into the tiger or we may not. It doesn't really matter. We don't have anything to defend ourselves with. We can't outrun it. Therefore, the best thing we can do right now is to forget about the tiger. We need to concentrate on getting to Lago. That's our only option. Mark looked down at the pug marks. Or we could walk in the opposite direction. You mean walk back down the road? John asked. Yeah. Suit yourself, John said, and continued walking in the direction of the pug marks. Mr. Charm, Mark muttered. Nicole smiled. Are you really okay? I'm fine. You're the cat expert. What do you do when you run into one in the dark during a volcanic eruption? Cats generally go after the weakest or the slowest. Mark looked at his camera. This thing is going to be the death of... A lightning bolt struck the ground not 20 feet in front of them. Nicole and Mark were blown off their feet. They landed on their backs with the air knocked out of them. Nicole raised her head and gulped for breath. The air was filled with the sharp, acrid smell of ozone. She wasn't exactly sure what had happened. She sat up. Mark? Yeah? She could barely hear him. It was as if she had cotton stuffed in her ears, and there was something the matter with her vision. Flashes of bright lights pulsed across her eyes, making it impossible to see more than a few feet away. Did we just get struck by lightning? Her own voice sounded like it was a mile away from her. No, Mark said, but it was close. Too close. Can you stand up? Nicole turned her head, surprised to see that he was right next to her. You sound a million miles away. Eardrums, he said. We'll be okay in a little bit. Can you stand? I think so. She felt him take her hand and pull her to her feet. I'm having a hard time seeing. That will come back too, Mark said, his voice sounding a little less muffled. The flash was pretty bright. Blinded me too for a minute, but things are beginning to come into focus again. What about, Nicole began. That's my next stop, Mark said. I'll run up ahead and see how he's doing. He probably didn't even notice that we nearly got hit. Nicole doubted that. Wait here, Mark said. She wasn't about to wait there. She followed him. 50 feet away, they found John Masters lying on the ground. His eyes were closed. He was pale. His right foot was turned at an unnatural angle. Nicole knelt down next to him. He's not breathing, she said. As Chase and Cindy reached the first floor, the air went still. They stopped and looked at each other. The rumbling's gone, Chase said. Cindy nodded. I hadn't really noticed the noise until now. I wonder what it means, Chase said. They walked into the kitchen and saw Tomas standing at the window. He was holding 2 young children in his arms and looking out at the volcano. Guadalupe stood behind him, stirring a delicious-smelling stew on top of a wood stove. The moon, Tomas said in English, giving Chase and Cindy a rare smile. They joined him at the window. The full moon shined brightly next to the plume, casting an eerie light down the mountainside. Is it over? Cindy asked. Tomas nodded. For now. How do you know? Chase asked, hoping he was right. Experience, Guadalupe answered in surprisingly better English than Tomas spoke. The worst is behind us. We will mourn our dead, and then we will rebuild. Tomas put the two children down and looked at the bump on Chase's head. I'm fine, Chase said. Good. He handed Chase his go bag. We need to fix the generator. Chase pulled his headlamp out and slipped it on. The tiger stood listening in the stillness. He looked up at the moon until the ash cloud hid the light. He drank more water. The people were close. He could hear them talking. He was hungry.